The Pope is dead. The Pope is singing with the choir invisible. The Pope has bought the farm and is pushing up the daisies. The Pope is no more. And we may have a problem with the Vice President having to do something with it. We do not know. It is conspiracy theory that is in the interwebs at this particular moment in time, but we shall discuss it. Stephen has the story. Stephen?
Thank you so much, Cynthia. Yes, Jessica DiNapoli of Reuters reports that Pope Francis's tenure served to deepen divisions within the Catholic Church. Many American Catholics, especially conservatives, turned against his progressive stances on immigration, climate change, and LGBTQ plus inclusion, favoring conservative Catholic media organizations instead. DiNapoli says that this pulled American Catholic identity closer to right-wing politics and pitted the Vatican's call for a more inclusive church against the national push for stricter traditionalism. This story covered by Jessica DiNapoli of Reuters on April 22nd, 2025.
Thank you, Stephen. And I have no idea why I'm still speaking like this, but I might do it for the entire segment, so bear with me. If I go back to my regular American accent, I will let you know. Or not. But Stephen, I'm going to stick with you. Excuse me. So, Stephen, thank you for actually introducing the story. I'm going to say this in my regular voice right now, but I have a question for you.
Yeah.
What does the United States Catholic Church conservative shift say about the broader, the broader relationship between religion
There you go.
and public political power?
What does it say? Like it makes sense. Like honestly, like religion is more about identity than spiritual formation in a lot of circles. Like, you can't wash everything with the exact same brush, but because religion is something that is it's vapor, right? It's a belief that you want to perpetuate for yourself. There's nothing actually tangible about it other than the thoughts that are going on in your head and the thoughts that are shared with other people. So by taking that vapor of political belief and shrouding a political identity, whether it's conservative, evangelicalism, whatever, what have you, it gives that vapor some actual bones, because that political thought is something that can be an identity that people can actually share and action on. So it makes sense that that an entire branch of a religion can drift one way politically, and it shows that the two have always been linked. That religion in and of itself has never really, or in very few cases, has ever really existed aside from political identity. It's a tale as old as time, right? Their religion and politics have always been connected, and it's just another example of politicians and popes sucking each other off for their own benefit.
Indeed. We know throughout history, especially when we're looking at European history, how integral the Catholic Church, and especially with the Pope, has been to basically working with whatever authoritarian happened to be in office at that time or on the throne, because for the majority of Europe's existence, it has been monarchies, right? So we know when you piss the Pope off, like the Pope got pissed off back in the 1500s when Henry VIII came into power, when he decided to go ahead and break off because he wanted to get some of that punani from Anne Boleyn legally. And she promised him a son. So he's like, bye, Catherine. Hello, Anne. And, and said, and I'm going to declare myself the head of the church. The Pope at the time was like, excommunicated, and Henry was like, meh, but we even seen this type of political wielding from from Catholic heads of church, state, nation state, rather, even in modern day times. Remember when there was talk from some of the cardinals that was in, the Pope's cabinet, even in the United States, about excommunicating Joe Biden because even though that he was a Catholic, he still supported a woman's right to choose, a birthing person's right to choose, and that did not sit well with them. So we know that a lot of times there's this authority that the Pope and the Catholic Church has basically touted that they had because it was God given, and they had the moral authority according to their edict that this is something that they can and will do. AJ, won't you talk a little bit more about the moral authority, especially when it comes to the Pope, right here and right now?
I think, as far as like the moral, not necessarily the moral authority, but like the current environment that we find ourselves in as far as the politics and religion. I think in the US, the Catholic Church leaders, especially in the general Catholic population, but especially the leaders, hold a much more conservative view than what Pope Francis did, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like in the very beginning of his papacy, like in 2015, I think he came into the Vatican in 2013, correct? So like 2 years into it, his approval in America was 90% by Catholics, obviously, not all Americans.
Sure.
Thank goodness. So like 90% of Catholic Americans saw him favorably. But this changed as the time went on, and Francis was, his more progressive personal opinions were made public. Mm-hmm. And by last year, in 2024, his approval rating by U.S. Catholics had gone down to 75%. I would say that's quite a drop. That is quite a drop.
I mean, heck, it's better than our leaders that we have in office right now. So.
Oh yeah, I mean, he was just not as conservative as they wanted him to be, and it goes to show that they believe what they believe, and if a new idea is introduced and they don't like it, even if it comes from their ultimate leader, the representative of God, they're still not going to accept it. Right? Mm-hmm. They're stuck in this 2,000-year-old ideology, and they're not going to move on from it, no matter how many popes told them about it. I mean, he even tried to stock the Vatican with cardinals from places that had never had them before, like, that were beyond Europe, like Tonga, Haiti, Mongolia. He wanted to make sure that there was more representation beyond Europe. But unfortunately, we are seeing a lot of rumors that this didn't help much, and that unfortunately there's already names in line for the next pope that are as conservative as the previous ones. So sadly.
Yeah, there is. I forgot the cardinal's name. I believe that he's from Africa.
Yeah, I forgot too. Sorry.
Yeah, I could do a quick Google search, real quick. Let me see, African and the cardinal. Next.
Yeah, but he is one of the ones that has been floated around, who is extremely conservative as far as all kinds of views, like homosexuality, climate change, immigration rights, women's rights, contraception, etc.
Yeah, there's two that's kind of floating around. One is Peter Turkson from Ghana, and then there's another one called Cardinal Fridolin Ambongo from the the Democratic Republic of Congo. And I know that the Ghanese cardinal is extremely conservative. But when you think about the Catholic Church, especially in like some of those and some other, I would say, like nation states that's in Africa, and also like in the Caribbean and so on and so forth, they are not, the religious leadership is not progressive at all. They're just not. I remember, like, with my mom being Jamaican, and even though that she was raised in the Anglican church, she talked about how, the slightest thing, if it looks like a church leader was into something that may have been deemed sinful, or even, like, saying, I recognize that LGBTQIA plus people exist, defrocked, you know, and this is not a sensibility that I really, don't necessarily think that has, left a lot of those particular nations. And especially when you are looking at nations where there is no church, there is no church state separation. And, like, oftentimes that they can definitely bring those ideals to them, to Rome, to basically, like, reinforce them. And if there even have been, like, some possible steps in the right direction by Pope Francis, it's not necessarily going to be something that sticks, depending on who's going to be in the seat next time when the white smoke goes up. But Stephen, I wanted to ask you about you cheering for the Catholic Church splinters. Is this
course.
true? Oh,
Yeah.
what's going on with that?
Yeah, it's a big secret. No, I don't mince words when it comes to the Catholic Church being an organization that does crime, and if it and like power corrupts, right? That's just like a given. That for where we're at in our development as human beings, power is so. I don't know if it's an absolute, but
Mm,
power will corrupt eventually. And the Catholic Church has been very powerful for a very long time, and they have been corrupt for such a long time. And sure, they may do good, but they also do so much evil. They do so much harm. So if this is a chink in their armor, that there is a division fomenting now between American conservative Catholics and the rest of the world, I'm not too sure where exactly those lines get drawn. But especially if that chink is driven by questions of compassion and
mm,
empathy,
mm,
I think that's a really good weakness. I would think it's good for the curtain to get pulled back so that the people who are in that religion and are in touch with that empathy and in touch with compassion, and they're able to say, oh, this organization that I identify with is not championing that cause. It's good for them to become cognizant of that. And if that causes them to, if that, especially if seeing the church, dig into conservative ideas, entrench in them, and if that causes more people to leave, then I think that's wonderful. I think I hope that we will see the breaking of disillusionment
mm.
through by just people being honest and like saying, okay, yeah, this is the bullshit that is going on.
You mentioned something about compassion and also empathy, but I think that we all can think of examples where, on an organizational level, that the Catholic Church has not been that at all. I know, AJ, you were talking about a bit concerning about billions of dollars to protect abusers in the Catholic Church. You want to talk about that a little bit more?
Absolutely, yeah. And what Steven was just saying is on point. Like you can't ignore the harms that they are doing, that they've been doing for hundreds of years. It's not a recent thing. It's not a new thing. Okay.
Over a millennia, actually. It's
Yeah,
been over a
like
millennia. Yeah.
they have a fund for protecting against sexual abuse accusations towards the church. Um, all around the world, they have this fund has billions allocated to these protections for the church leaders. And from 2004 through 2023, they spent over $5 billion to protect themselves from allegations of abuse, of sexual abuse against minors, children, kids. Okay, so about 3.5 billion of that was paid to the victims. Hush money, hush money for sure. I mean, um, they just want to sweep these things, these accusations under the rug and keep people quiet, keep these children and their families quiet. So they, stack them up with a little bit of green, and that's it. Then 750 million of that was spent on attorney fees to defend the clergy. And Francis became Pope in 2013, which means that he was the leader of this institution during a lot of the time that these figures that I just mentioned, these payments that were made and these accusations were being made. And ultimately, he did nothing. He approved, if anything, he more than likely approved of those payments. And nothing has changed since then. He was an accomplice to the abuse of those children.
Yeah, I know that like we've talked about on past episodes concerning Pope Francis and how there's this one portion of him that seems more progressive than the other popes, even acknowledging the trauma, the pain, the agony that formerly abused members have suffered under clergy, and even condemned some of the action of dioceses moving priests from church to church after they've been found out that they have been, credibly, accused of abuse, right? But when it came to really doing the due diligence in order to make sure that people who are still in priestly attire that have been accused be brought to justice. I can think of so many stories where even though the Catholic Church, I want to say about a few years ago, produced a list of people who have been accused or even possibly found liable for abuse, clergy members, leadership, etc. But the majority of the names were from people who were deceased or retired outside of the statute limitations. And I don't know when you can jail a dead person. I don't think that that's something that can happen at this particular moment in time. We can work on it, but I'm just saying, yeah, it's going to be a little bit difficult, but they still had people who were in the office of priest and things of that nature that have been credibly accused of abuse and never went through their due diligence of making sure that these people are prosecuted to the letter of the law. They had for a very long time a code of silence, and also this whole idea that the church can deal with its own. But if we had almost a millennia of documented abuse cases, I think that the earliest abuse case that I've seen was like in the 800s. I mean, like that's insane. And if this is to the point where now the actions of clergy are institutionalized because they've happened for so long. They've happened on every continent that a Catholic Church diocese has been set up. In every nation where a church diocese has been set up, there has been allegations. A lot of them are very credible of priestly abuse. Yet and still, no action that is even worth like a dollar to its name being taken by the leadership, including Pope Francis, to make sure that these people came to justice. AJ, what were you going to say?
Yeah, no, I was going to say, speaking of unspoken abuse within the Catholic Church, I was recently reading about the little girls that are in the non-convents. And there are so many cases of these little girls being also sexually, mentally, and physically abused, and it's hardly spoken about. Like we mostly focus on priests abusing little boys, which I am not going to take away from that. But I just wanted to point out that it happens all over the Catholic Church, all over.
Yeah, it's not just young boys that have been abused. It has been young girls. It has been nuns. You know, there was a book that my mom was telling me about that she read years and years ago that was talking about how nuns were being, you know, abused by priests and, you know, got pregnant, and either they had to go through forced abortions, or they would have to, or they would sell their babies up for adoption.
The very thing that they prey upon,
Yeah.
abortion, and very interesting.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the very thing that they want to pray away, right, is the very thing that their own people who have been through ordination, who have been through their whole schooling and things of that nature, through their priest education, you know, have done this. And it's and the crazy thing about it is like, this is this, you know, Stephen, as you said, this is a tale as old as time. Like, this is something that we're constantly hearing again and again. And unfortunately, you know, as much as like some people want to celebrate the life of Pope Francis as being this, like, you know, beacon of Pope light, because like he acknowledged, you know, that, you know, LGBTQ people should be able to, they're not married, but we can bless their unions, right? But he still thinks it's a sin, but, you know, they're not necessarily going to hell. Or are they? I don't know. We'll see. Still praying on that. You know, it's this whole, he constantly was doing this dance back and forth between, you know, today I feel like being a liberal. Scratch that. Now I'm going to be a religious, you know, a religious fanatic today. You know, that this is something that unfortunately has been, you know, part and parcel of the behavior of this pope. And as much as I would love to, you know, celebrate somebody who actually kind of broke the mold of what, you know, the office of the pope has traditionally been, I can't, because he has not always broke the mold himself. But I want to give you guys a chance to, you know, give your final thoughts. First, Stephen, I'm going to go to you, and then I'm going to go to you, AJ.
I'm reminded of a quick anecdote. When I was working at a retreat center, an event center, only once did we have like a very large gathering of Catholic priests gather there for their annual whatever it is for the whole district, because they usually do those things in their own place, but they booked our place. And it was so interesting. One day I was in line, like serving a meal to these folks, and the local priest and his protege, I saw them coming through the line. They knew me because of my family's connection. And when the protege saw me in line, oh my God, he's like changing his hair and trying to be like, it was just like, you are ashamed for me to recognize you here because you don't want me to know like what is going on in these shared bedrooms at this retreat center with all this alcohol. What? Why? You know what? Never mind. I know my answer.
Was it even transfigurated? Was the alcohol transfigurated? Did it actually become the blood of Jesus?
Maybe.
Through some sacrificial blood magic that, you know, that they do when they do the Mogul great foggy sow looking face on, you know, Gregorian chant over the alcohol. No.
Got a little toasty in there.
Yeah, I bet.
It's all facade. It's all fronting. It's just human nature, and we see it all the time. Church is no different.
Yeah, the hypocrisy kills me, AJ.
Yeah, speaking of fronting, you know, you mentioned a minute ago about the Pope Francis stance on LGBTQ rights, and I think the media had a lot to do with the way people perceived Pope Francis, thinking that he was progressive. I'm not going to say that he wasn't more progressive than other popes, but he wasn't progressive enough to be called progressive, in my opinion, personal opinion. He's been praised over his support of LGBTQ people, but that is not quite true. The praise came from people seeing in the media that he claimed to bless gay unions, right? And he stated that being homosexual was not a crime and that laws criminalizing homosexuality are unjust. And that's perfectly fine. But
It's still sinful.
last year on the show 60 Minutes, he clarified his views. He was asked straight up if he was supportive of gay marriage or gay unions, and he corrected this reporter. He said, and I quote, "What I allowed was not to bless the union. That cannot be done because that is not the sacrament, but to bless each person." Yes, the blessing is for everyone. So to bless a homosexual type union, however, goes against the given right and against the law of the church. So yes, it's a sin. So ultimately, I think that perhaps he was just expressing his personal opinions and trying not to be so harsh, but he clearly did nothing to make sure that the church itself took these same moral stances or that they changed their official rules. Okay.
That'd be real leadership.
That's my, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And to be honest, I think that like as much as I stated before, as we want to give the moniker to progressive pope, he really was not. You know, he just happened to be less shitty than the ones that came before. But if you don't want to watch something less shitty, then you should watch more nonprofits. So click here.